Well, welcome to Meet Follower of One. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
We don't have a lot of other participants yet, but it's just now the top of the hour, so we're just getting started. So thank you for doing this. I was actually overlooking at Divine Purpose of Work. I put your website in the chat for the invitation to this, and we'll also put it in the notes and the video where we post this. So
Okay.
why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with the Divine Purpose of Work? Tell us about you. Let's just get started like that.
Well, as you and I have talked about in the past, a minister at our church challenged a few of us and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing for the next generation of church members?" Specifically, what he was talking about. And I got to thinking about, what could I do? My background's business and technology, and I thought, what could I help with? And as I kind of went down that road, I got to thinking, why isn't the church doing more things around business? And thinking business really is probably one of the biggest mission fields there exists, and members are going there every week, every day, and they're already invested. And so that kind of got me going down that road, thinking, why isn't our church or any church is doing more of that?
Yeah. And so then you started looking around for other people that were doing it too, right?
Yeah, so I started doing some research and just thinking, to benefit my church, what are other churches doing? Why reinvent the wheel, right? I'm as a technology guy and business guy, I'm all about efficiency, right? Why? You don't need to, I don't want to claim it. It's not mine. If I can use somebody else's, then fine. And so I did some research and found that there's very few churches out there doing any type of workplace, marketplace, whatever you want to call the ministry, any ministry focused on the workplace, whether it be as a mission opportunity or whether it be from empowering and educating their members on what the true biblical, definition of work is.
Yeah.
And so I found a lot of third-party organizations, C12, Truth at Work, all these different other organizations out there that are doing it. And there's nothing against those organizations. I think a lot of them are very, very good. But what I felt God, kind of put on my heart is, well, but why isn't the church doing this? I don't mean just my church. I mean globally, corporately. Why aren't evangelical churches embracing the opportunity to educate and empower their own members on how to live out their faith at work and see their work as a mission field?
Yeah, well, and I've introduced you to some people. Many of us have been frustrated with that for a long time. So Jim Brangenberg's putting together the Tapestry Project, and he had found like 700 different ministries, and almost none of them are associated with a church.
Yeah.
And it just seems like we have this kind of blind spot where we're both looking in different directions and we're not helping each other. And so I'm not that way. Part of the reason why Follower of One works the way it does is because I just want to get everybody who is irritated with the problem together and see what happens.
Right. Sure.
I tell people that I just want to run the bar where all the busy Christians hang out. So
there you go. Yeah. So I didn't see anything out there, and I felt like God was leading me in a direction. But what I know I didn't want to do was set up another organization that's outside the church that is doing what I think God is saying the church should be addressing this. And I'm not specifically saying how, but just seeing it as an opportunity, not an opportunity, really an obligation to really educate and empower their members that are going out into the place they see the most unsaved people on a daily basis, and they're already invested in it. And so, I didn't know where it was going, didn't know really where God was leading me in this, other than something that He wanted me to continue focusing on. So, and it's still a work in progress. But part of what in my research and talking to different ministers in different churches, they really don't know what to do, and they don't have the time to figure it out. I mean, bless the ministers in our church and every church, they're just overworked.
Yeah.
And most of them have, a ministry background. They've got went to, theology school, and, so they don't have a business background, understand what that environment looks like. So I just felt some way, somehow, what can I do to help address this problem? And so I kind of started with, well, maybe there's some content that should be created. Not that there's not a ton of content out there, but it's not my content. It's not something I can do something with, right? So
Yeah.
I felt the need to create some content that I have control over, that I can give away. I can do what I want to with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and as you and I have talked about, AI has become my good friend. So in working with AI and, kind of giving it a parameter of, this is what I want to create. And so I was able to create these different documents, and one of them being kind of the foundational document, the divine purpose of work, which is what I then created my website around. And it really is just a foundational document around the true meaning, biblical meaning of work, and how we're supposed to live out our faith in the workplace. And so that's where it started.
Well, and I don't know if there's a technical problem or not. Hopefully this is all recording well, because you and I are here. Nobody else is. Typically there are other people that join us on this thing. You said that live button wasn't showing up, so I'm interested to see what's going on. But anyway, I knew Chris might be out, so typically she gets on here, so we'll see what happens. But worst comes to worst, we'll have a good recording. I wanted people to know about your website. It's the divinepurposeofwork.com.
Correct.
And now you've ended up creating a bunch of tools on there. Tell us a little bit more about the journey of how you started putting that together.
Well, as I said, kind of my primary goal is to help churches embrace the idea of the marketplace as a mission field, in educating their the members. And again, my kind of first step in doing that was creating my own content. So I created content around as I started creating content, I kind of identified 5 different areas that need content. And again, this is not a knock on other content that's out there. It more boiled down to, it's content I can control. I can do with what I want, so to speak. So my first area was individuals. There's the individual and him and her's understanding of, the biblical definition of work, and what their place is within work, and that God, ordained work as something good. Now the fall made it more difficult, and it's thorns and thistles, that type of thing. But God put Adam in the garden to work it before the fall of man. God created the heavens and earth. I mean, God works. So work is something that is a blessing from God that we get fulfillment out of. We get and unfortunately we take it too far in sometimes, and it's more self-worth than it should be, and those type of things. But in and of itself, like anything else, you can take it to an extreme, but work is a good thing. And so I started creating some content around, like I said, the divine purpose of work, and then create a workbook to go along with that, and then created a devotional to go with that, and kind of building off of that. And then as I was again going into it, I thought, what? That's the individual. That's the person that works for somebody. But then there's also business owners. They have a whole different set of dynamics when it comes to work, and also the biblical view of it. As a business owner, first and foremost, it's not your business. It's God's business. God owns everything.
Stewardship.
And so when you say business owner, yes, you're the owner, technically, but technically God owns it. You're stewarding it for God. So do you have the right mindset when it comes to what this is? This really is a stewardship, as you said. And so there's a whole dynamic on that area, and also how they deal with employees, and how you deal with debt, and how you deal with risk and legal issues, that type of thing. So I created some content around that. and then so that kind of focuses the individual people that are working. But then I thought, well, okay, well, what does the church need? So the church needs these content, but they also need, some type of plan, some type of organization, some type of, leading their people and educating their people. So I created some content around that. And again, I'm not it's not that I'm a scholar when it comes to this. When I say I created it, really is I didn't write it. I created it, by using AI to be completely honest. And but basically create parameters around AI and say, I want to create under this environment, these parameters, this type of, and it can create content for you that not you didn't have to actually review and modify and verify. But I think I may have said with you, I said to somebody else, you can have an iPhone, you can do a lot of bad things with an iPhone, you can do a good thing with an iPhone. It's a tool, right? Why are we using AI as a tool to, advance the kingdom as well? So
exactly.
So they're not creating, like I said, content for churches. And again, throughout this whole dynamic, I'm thinking, man, students really need to know this before they get into the workforce.
Yeah.
If we can educate our especially through Christian schools, if we can educate our high school students to understand the biblical meaning of work, use the biblical, parameters around, career choice, what are my skills, what are my spiritual gifts, those type of things, and be able to, educate them now, because part of what we're dealing with, and I'm sure you're seeing it too, as you're talking with, because as we've talked in the past, we've launched a marketplace ministry at our church about 1.5 years ago. And so part of the issues we're dealing with is getting people having to change their mindset on the true meaning of work, and having to understand, I think we talked about this too at one time. You hear about the work-life balance. That's not the point. It's life balance. Work is part of life. And so make sure you put it in the right context. And if you can get high school students to understand that early on, you avoid a lot of pain and having to, kind of educate them. But so then I thought, well, there's some content that schools could use as well. And so I've created some content around that. So, and again, you can see all that, at least a definition of all the stuff I have to date on the website.
Well, and I think it's cool what you've done, because basically you create a little bit of a framework, and people can plug their own content and their own personalities into the framework and make it work for them. Right?
Correct. This isn't like here's a plan from A to Z. These are, again, I keep going back to conversations we've had. Part of what I saw this as is a toolkit. It's a toolkit to be able to pick and choose what you need within the dynamics of your church or your school or your work life, whatever, to advance wherever you are in life, right? So this isn't a end all be all solves all problem type of thing, but it's content that gets people thinking. I think you and I have again had this conversation. We talk to people and say, well, have you thought about a marketplace ministry at your church? Well, you ask 10 people the definition of a marketplace ministry, you're going to get probably 12 answers. So there's not a consistent, definition of what this is. So you got to start somewhere. So you got to start with a document that's like, hey, what about this? And people go, well, I understand that now, but that wouldn't work for me, and here's why. Well, great. You can now take you to the next level, right? It's a place to start from.
Yes. Well, and Nancy Thomas just joined us, so we at least know that we can be found inside the online community. So hi, Nancy. Thanks for joining us. I agree with you, Steve. You and I, we have talked about this a lot, so we're letting everyone else in on the conversations that you and I have had. But I think it's exciting because we're trying to do these things to make it easy. Wouldn't it be great if you have a small church, or if you're involved in a 200 or 300 member church, a lot of the tools that you need to figure out how you can get started helping your co-worshipers be ministers in their own job. And we can all, that's what we have to do, is make this, we're trying to make this easy for churches. I also, what's kind of funny is I think almost everybody, it seems like, wants to know how they can help their church do this. And that's another thing that's kind of come out of our interaction, because Prestonwood has the Prestonwood Foundation and the Marketplace Ministry kind of already established. You guys have a leadership team. I'm coaching a lot of churches on how to build a leadership team of 2 or 3 or 4 business people to kind of drive this.
That is important. And again, I'm talking based on my experience, which is, it's not, decades or anything, but as I said, we launched Prestonwood's Marketplace Ministry about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And as I said, with any church, the ministers are already overloaded. And so what you can't do, again, my opinion, you can't go to church and say, hey, we should really do this. Here, pastor, go do this. I mean, it's like, well, what priority did I put that in? So you really, to your point, you really need to get leaders, men and women that are willing to step up and embrace the opportunity to create a workplace, a marketplace ministry within their church. And I'm not necessarily saying it has to be led by someone outside the church. It can be obviously led by the ministers. It needs to be within their, obviously, parameters and oversight and that type of thing. But just taking an idea to a minister and say, hey, go run with this, go do this, this is your job. I think that's a failed.
Exactly. Well, no, it's much more of a partnership, and it will depend on the church and the individuals in all those situations. And I'm confident that people will run into some pastors that don't want to do this because they can't control it. True. And I think there'll be some business people who want to run every detail of it, and that probably won't work well either. But still, for those of us that are looking for a way to do this, because I've openly complained about this. I always talk about how I felt like, especially those first few years when I was trying to figure out how to live out my faith, that after church was over on Sunday, if I couldn't make it to some other church event during the next 6 days, that my job was to basically just stay out of trouble till I could. And, it's kind of funny. I'm old enough. I used to say I was to stay out of the newspaper until I could. Now I just say stay out of trouble because nobody knows what a newspaper is anymore. But but the whole point being, this is what we business people have been complaining about for years. The only option for me is run the men's ministry or work in the nursery or teach a Sunday school class or something like that. No, now one of those ministry leadership roles could be helping my church mobilize every other workplace believer to see that they live and work on a mission field.
Yeah, and that's what we did within Prestonwood. We, I approached our church about a marketplace ministry, but I did that knowing I'll be willing to do what I need to, but I'm also not going to dictate you're going to use me to do X, Y, and Z. But I think this is a need. I'm here to help. What do you need us to do? And since then, they've embraced it. We've got a board of, I guess, 5 guys that are there, and we're, there to help facilitate, come up with ideas, be there, but we're there to support the church in this endeavor, but it's led by them. But we're the ones kind of stepping out in faith and not in faith, but I mean, doing the work.
Exactly. And to me, that's what I believe is so key about what we're talking about here. It's for everyone listening to this to figure out how you become one of those people in your congregation, because that's where this changes. The momentum doesn't really change. I felt like for the last 25 years, we've been talking primarily to business owners because those are the people with the resources, but it really doesn't, the needle doesn't move until we get everyone else playing from the same set of music. And we're not all playing the same instruments. Some of us work in a warehouse or whatever. We all have different instruments that we play, but we've got to all start playing together or we don't move the needle.
Yeah. And also, I came to my church with this idea and had a whole list of thoughts and ideas on what to do and how to do it, but I wasn't going to, impose it on them. But, they want our help and, but it has to be within their environment, within their time frame, within their parameters. And so I would just say don't get too frustrated. I went there, gung ho. Here's all these things, and
Yeah.
we did a few. And of course, Presswood's a big church. It's hard to turn. It's hard to turn a church like that in a direction. It's just a big boat. But no, we're making a lot of strides. But it's in God's timing. But again, anybody that kind of catches the bug and is really hopped on this, just understand your church is its own organization, and we'll adapt it as it can.
Yes. Yeah, and Nancy's been making some comments as well. She agrees with us, talking about how places bring different people together, and it gives us an opportunity to show Christ's kingdom and his love to others. And so I think what we're learning is now we're learning how to go back into the organizations that have been training us for centuries, or the church, and helping them with this message in the business world and I should say, in the outside world. There's not a really good name for it, because it's not just business, medical, educational, government. I've got some friends who talk about the 7 mountains of culture and all that stuff. And unfortunately, culture doesn't divide that easily, but you need to make it work in all those places. And so that's why God puts different people there.
Yep.
Right. So,
yeah.
So what else are you seeing happen? So what's some of the early progress and things that you've seen in your efforts with the Divine Purpose of Work and just the breakfast efforts and the mission trips at Prestonwood?
So, like I said, we started Prestonwood about 2 years ago, and since then we're up to about half a dozen weekly business study groups, different varying things. Some do, what my group does is a video content based on the Right Now Media content. And we're going through one right now on Chick-fil-A's structure. And so sometimes it's based on, business owner type things. Sometimes it's based on individual workplace. And then we have a quarterly breakfast, which we just had. We had, 220 people there, I think, which is probably the largest we've had. And that, with some context, that breakfast had been going on for several years, named something different. But, and then we've done, 4 of your marketplace mission trips, I think. We have another one coming up in March. And just working through the best way to implement that within our church, as each church has their own dynamics, but we're kind of gaining steam there. One thing we're trying to obviously manage is we can't just announce this to the whole church, because our church is kind of large, so we don't want to overwhelm, so we're kind of balancing it, but really enjoy and appreciate your content and your program. As far as what I'm doing with the Divine Purpose of Work and ebook, I've really just got the website up in the last 30 days. So I really haven't pushed it. I really haven't worked through any type of marketing push. I'm still kind of putting structure around it. And but what I have done is talk to a few churches, talk to a few pastors about what they're looking at, and also reached out to a large Christian school association to find out what within the Christian school environment are they doing related to educating their students from a biblical standpoint of the definition of work, and preparing them for a biblical view of work in their career. And they really don't have a lot. And so they're actually coming back to me saying, hey, let's expand this more, which is why I focused on some more Christian school content. So I'm really interested to see where that goes, because that is obviously a very fertile environment where we're already teaching people things, right? So it's different than the church environment. You have to kind of create this environment of teaching, where in the school they're already in a teaching mode, right? So, but I'm not sure how that's going to be implemented from a curriculum standpoint. So we're trying to still work through all that. But yeah, I'm as far as progress over the last 30, 60 days, I'm very happy about where this may be going in the Christian school environment.
Yeah, very cool. Well, and Addison Williams joined us too. So slowly but surely, we're picking up a little steam here in the live stream. So what's interesting is I think in the schools there's more interest than we know. In fact, it's kind of funny, but I have a couple of other friends. One friend I've just been speaking to has got some kids in a Christian college, and one that just graduated from there. And so I think there's going to be more and more interest. In fact, you and I talked about this as well. I believe God is scaling the resources for the solutions. He's, you know, a friend of mine a long time ago was with a network of radio stations, Christian radio stations, and he took the Marketplace mission trip. And I said, "Hey, would you promote this on your radio station?" And he said, "If we did, it would kill you." Because they had like 1 million daily listeners.
Right.
And so, you know, if they promoted it very well at all on a radio station, we would have gotten some percentage of 1 million, and all the percentages of 1 million would have killed us, any one of them. And so, but I do think he's growing our ministries and getting us ready for this next season. I do believe there's a scaling that we'll have to do. We'll have to grow, scale up, not grow scales, but that he's getting us ready. And that's where the church comes in. The church is this distributed process for managing us in smaller groups. And to me, that's his answer for this is the church. The church isn't going anywhere. Right. And so that to me is also why it's kind of cool that both of our ministries have kind of found a way to start being valuable to the local church. Because really this is the local church's problem to solve, but the local church being whoever's leading it, both on staff and off staff. Leadership isn't necessarily a staff position at a church.
Sure.
Right. And so to me, that's what's exciting about this. As it takes on all these additional facets and does all these different things, that's part of what surprised me is the ease with which, from my perspective, you created a lot of content using all the AI stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't read it all word for word, but it's definitely good material. And there's other great things too, but we're just trying to help people get started doing the ministry. It's not about the content as much as it is about the results.
Yeah, the content really is just a way, it's a starting point. When you have a conversation with somebody, you talk about marketplace ministry, everything, you know, kind of eyes glaze over. There's no defined, you know, what that is. Well, start giving them content. This is what I'm talking about. All of a sudden, okay. And then you can also bring in these other additional, here's a leadership tool, here's a, you know, daily devotional. Then all of a sudden you're hoping then they start picking up steam and going, oh, okay, I see this. What about this? And they bring up, you know, that's not going to work in my church because of this. Well, we would like something like this. So anyway, it's a starting point to create a conversation, and it's tools that they can use to, you know, advance whatever it is they're trying to advance at their church or their school.
Exactly. And to me, that's actually, you know, again, another one of those situations where the Lord's plans are so much better than anything I could imagine, right?
True.
And so it's very cool. So I was, so Nancy's talking about, oh, I see here. She's making a comment about follower of one, that it shows us that we can all contribute to the kingdom right where we stand. That's right. I mean, there's got to be a way for each of us to be able to play, because we can't, the Lord is in charge of all of this, not us.
Sure. Yep.
So what's next for the Divine Purpose of Work and for what you're working on?
I'm really not sure. Like I said, each of these steps I've taken has just kind of been a step of faith, not knowing where it's going. I have no interest to be the face of any movement. I'm just trying to create some tools that I think, you know, would help in certain areas. Like I said, we've talked to a few churches, a few ministers, just to see, what their thought is around marketplace ministry, sorry, and then what it is, whatever their definition is, what do they need to help, implement that work within their church, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing with the Christian school environment. I guess I'm talking to the large association, but I really want to talk to some schools and say, okay, here's the concept. How would this work? How do you see this being implemented within your school environment? What does it look like? Is it a course? Is it is it after school? Is it, I don't know what the implementation looks like, right?
Yeah.
I just got some content that kind of would help them advance the idea, but then how they would implement that is unknown. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of at the point now to where I've created content. I've thought of a lot more content to create, but really until we understand how this is going to be implemented and adopted and absorbed, and kind of what the next step would be, it's really talking to people and hearing what their thoughts are and getting feedback on the content. And again, the content isn't the end all be all; it's the starting point to get to the next level.
Well, that's, again, I agree with you. That's what's changed. I think AI is changing that. I think we just managed to find this new combination. But the content, for so long, the content was king. We would create content and we would do things around that content. Now, what you and I are saying is, no, the content's not king at all. It's the practice. We serve a king. We have a practice. Content becomes a resource. It's a tool.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Correct.
to me, that's what's so exciting about this, because we can substitute the just the whole, you can switch out content in some regard, as long as we're going back to my heart in this ministry. As long as we're following Jesus, then the rest of this is his problem.
Yeah.
If I, here I am, Jesus, what do you want me to do today? If the answer is something I've never heard before, it still may be true. It's his problem, right?
Yep.
So it's very exciting. I've had a blast. I'm excited about all the things that God's doing. I'm grateful for you being part of our community and trying these things. It's been a lot of fun. So thank you for doing this.
No, I appreciate it. And I didn't say, but when I was doing my research early on, that's how you and I connected up. It was as I was reaching to see what other groups are out there doing, what other churches are doing marketplace or workplace ministry. I really didn't find much, but I found these other organizations, and you were one of them. And I'm really glad we got connected up, and you've been helpful, very, very helpful in what I've been doing.
Same here. I'm excited to see what God's going to do next. I don't want to be in the bathroom or out getting some popcorn. I want to stay in the seat and watch the movie.
Yeah, no. I look forward. I'm excited. I don't know what tomorrow is holding, but I'm excited where it's going, and think God is going to work through his people to advance his kingdom one way or the other. And like I said, as you said, I want to be part of it, not out to lunch whenever my time comes.
Yeah, Nancy, thank you very much for being on here. And Addison, thank you for joining us, even though we didn't chat too much. Steve, I'm grateful for you joining us.
Well, I appreciate it, Mike. Thank you very much. And as I've said before, I appreciate your heart and what you're doing, your program that you've spent a lot of time and effort to get off the ground, and just pray that more and more people hear it.
Well, I'm same here. I'm excited about what God's doing, and I see a lot of cool things happening. I'll be talking to you. I think we're going to have a school or two to talk to soon. Okay. I think we'll have some, even some other possibilities of some great next steps for members of our community to be a part of, and for others to be a part of, different churches. We're talking to a number of churches right now and schools. And so I think it will be exciting to see what happens next. Thanks, Steve, for doing this, and thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.